vivid image in my head of a legendary hero. You know the one. A charming rogue living out his terrifying realization about the blood-soaked truth behind this beloved childhood legend, and it completely shattered everything I thought I knew. I discovered that the fable we've been spoon-fed for centuries is, frankly, nothing more than a sanitized, comforting lie meant to... It was a man drowning in his own incredibly violent past.
And that brings me to the brutal, unvarnished reality that we've basically been shielded from all these years. Hitting theaters in June 2026 for May 24, director Michael Sarnowski is bringing us the death of Robin Hood, and it is going to absolutely tear the mask off this character. Just the logline alone literally sends a chill down my spine. We are stripping away the bright green tights, the hearty laughs, and those heroic hands-on-hips poses. Instead, we're left staring at a deeply flawed, incredibly dangerous man. The atmosphere they are building here is thick with dread, deliberately designed to confront us with this terrifying idea. What if our childhood messiah was actually a ruthless killer, and his sins have finally, inevitably caught up to him?
So we have to talk about how we go about completely destroying this hero myth, because this is a truly dark adaptation.
I want you to imagine we're sitting around a dying campfire. The shadows are stretching long into the trees, and I'm telling you who this man really was. We aren't just looking at a slightly edgier take on a familiar fable. This is a fundamental, ground-up unraveling of the Robin Hood archetype. We have to completely leave behind those bright, happy fables and overshadow them entirely with the grim reality of murderous crimes. The contrast is just incredibly stark. On one side, you have the fake, sanitized Hollywood myth, the merry messiah, who steals only to generously redistribute wealth to the needy. But on the exact opposite side, we have the harrowing reality of the murderous bandit. We are talking about a man who physically drags his victims into the dirt to dispose of them in shallow graves. We are watching a protagonist who can barely even stomach the legend that has been built around him anymore. This is a man who has mercilessly stolen both property and human lives, and he has entirely stopped believing his own lies.
Just listen to the absolute psychological decay in those words. This chilling piece of dialogue completely redefines who he is. It emphasizes Robin's total transformation into someone who only understands and frankly only communicates through extreme violence. He's in a highly aggressive, almost feral state of mind here. The glorifying songs and words of the common folk, they mean absolutely nothing to him anymore. He has chosen blood because he realizes that the world itself is entirely built on it. It's this haunting admission of guilt mixed with a terrifying promise of what he intends to do with whatever final days he has left. To really get a grasp on where this nightmare stems from, I had to dig deep into the bloody original ballads. Because, let me tell you, when you look back at the grim 17th century source material, these are not the bedtime stories we are used to. These are horrifying ancient texts that originally inspired the legend way before it was scrubbed clean by modern storytellers. There are these early ballads passed down through oral tradition, and they are unspeakably brutal. I'm endlessly fascinated by the ancient Percy Folio version of his death. It outlines this doomed journey where Robin Hood wishes to go to the church to get himself bled, which, was a super common medical practice back then. But the atmosphere is instantly cursed by an old woman he encounters along the way. It just descends into sheer tragedy. He's warned of his impending doom, which culminates in a brutal betrayal where he is viciously stabbed. In his agonizing final moments, bleeding out, he demands to be carried to his grave and buried surrounded by the symbols of his life as an archer. It's such a bleak, desperate end to a violently chaotic life.
But then, there is another, even more suffocating variant that I find completely terrifying, the lore surrounding Red Roger. In this version, the blame falls squarely on a prioress who intentionally bleeds him excessively. She deliberately locks him in a room for a whole day just to slowly drain his life away. Can you feel the visceral claustrophobia of that? Imagine being trapped in a confined space, your life literally bleeding out of you drop by drop, knowing you've been completely betrayed. Before he dies, he somehow manages to shoot one final arrow out the window, demanding to be buried wherever it lands in the dark. It is an incredibly isolated, agonizing way for a supposed legend to meet his end.
And it's that exact sense of agonizing tragedy that brings us right to Hugh Jackman's incredibly broken version of Robin Hood.
There is an immense emotional weight to this story, and it's resting squarely on Jackman's shoulders. We are looking at a physically and mentally tortured portrayal of the titular character. Again, this isn't the charming, grinning thief bounding through the forest. This is a deeply, irreparably broken man. Jackman is taking on a historical, grounded iteration of the outlaw, one who is severely injured, carrying the immense burden of his past sins, and desperately grappling with the staggering disconnect between his actual violent identity and the fake stories people tell about him. It's a painful dismantling of a fantasy tale. This is exactly what I mean when I say we are breaking the illusion here. It's not an anti-hero story where we cheer for his bad deeds, it is a methodical, painful destruction of a fantasy. Jackman is bringing to life a real man filled with scars, pain, and profound regret. He's examining how power can be used terribly, and what it actually does to the human soul when the crushing weight of those actions finally catches up with you.
I want you to picture the vivid imagery of this survival story for a second. We are following a bruised, exhausted man seeking one last shot at redemption in a totally unforgiving landscape. His soul is battered. He is physically and mentally drained to his absolute breaking point. He appears as this heavily bearded, muscle-bound, wild man. Honestly, much more intense and terrifying than you might ever expect. Finding himself severely injured after a bloody battle, he wanders through these beautiful yet entirely barren mountains. The sensory isolation here is just palpable. It's the imagery of a man completely stripped of all his mythical armor, left with absolutely nothing but his frail, failing humanity.
To pull off something with this kind of heavy, oppressive atmosphere, you need true architects of a cinematic nightmare.
And that's where Michael Sarnoski comes in. This is the director who gave us the intense, moody atmosphere of Pig and A Quiet Place Day One, and he is masterfully orchestrating this dread. The key word I keep coming back to here is revisionist. We are entirely reinterpreting the traditional narrative. And honestly, nobody embodies this revisionist energy quite like Jodie Comer. She steps into this bleak world, but absolutely not as the classic delicate Maid Marian trope we are so used to seeing. In fact, they are completely destroying that illusion. Instead, she plays a mysterious, sensitive presence who cares for Robin in his final violent days. Shot against the gorgeous, expansive gray skies of the northern Irish coast, her character introduces Robin to a completely different side of life. She brings a profound, quiet sensitivity that sharply, almost painfully, contrasts with his bloody past. It's hard not to get incredibly excited when you look at the rest of this heavy-hitting ensemble too. We have Bill Skarsgård stepping into the role of Little John, but he's bringing a highly complex, potentially antagonistic arc that completely turns the loyal sidekick trope on its head. Then you add the prestige, dramatic weight of Emmy winner Murray Bartlett and the intense psychological depth of Noah Jupe. This isn't just a standard action cast. This is an ensemble built specifically for a gothic period drama. They are here to dig deep into the messy, uncomfortable, and often ugly humanity of these legendary figures.
But a massive part of what makes this so impactful is how they are capturing this brutal reality on camera.
The overwhelming darkness of this script is matched entirely by the raw, technical brilliance behind the scenes. The physical production itself is designed to make you actually feel the dirt and the blood. We are moving far, far away from polished digital perfection and diving headfirst into something incredibly visceral. 35mm. There is a tactile, electric charge to shooting on real film, and I absolutely love that they committed to this. It's the real deal. When you take these epic, sweeping, scopic locations out in the barren mountains and on the northern Irish coast, and you literally burn those images onto 35mm film, you capture the true grit of the era in a way that digital just simply cannot replicate. It gives the imagery a texture, a grain, and an undeniable weight that perfectly grounds this terrifying historical reimagining. It makes the whole world feel ancient, authentic, and incredibly unforgiving.
Because the combat here, it isn't what we are used to at all. Contrast your typical action movie swordplay, the elegant fencing, the perfectly timed dancing choreography, with the sickening realization of what 17th century combat actually looked like. We are talking about desperate men thrashing around in the freezing mud, trying to crack each other's heads open with shovels. It's brutal. It almost gets toward feeling like a gritty, terrifying war movie rather than a fun adventure tale. It creates this claustrophobic atmosphere of pure, ugly survival, where every single swing is driven by blind panic and rage, rather than any sense of heroism. And that leaves me with a really haunting thought that I just haven't been able to shake since I started looking into this. What happens when the heroes we invent